Podcast by Friday, episode.
I would not want to learn from an expert. I want to learn from somebody who is not an expert.
Now wait just a minute there, Kingsley Grant. I disagree.
Go ahead.
Bum, bum. Tune in for Content Marketing Throwdown with Kingsley Grant and Bill Griggs. Podcast by Friday with Bill Griggs and Kingsley Grant. We help people to create their minimal viable podcast by taking bold action to defeat procrastination and to get their voices heard.
I'm Kingsley Grant.
And I'm Bill Griggs.
And you're listening to
Podcast by Friday. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Podcast by Friday. I'm Bill Griggs, and I'm here with the main man, Kingsley Grant.
Hey, Bill, what's up? It's great having this opportunity once again for us to get behind the microphone and record another episode of Podcast by Friday. I can't wait to jump into today's discussion.
Oh, yeah, man. This has been fun. You know, we've been doing things a lot more systematic this year. Things that have been flowing very well for us as we're talking about things in related topics, episode after episode. And I think that's better for us, and it's better for the listener to get a deep dive into these topics instead of flying by at 100,000 miles above you. So this is what I think we should be doing. I think this has been working.
It has been working very much so, and I think that it gives us a way to approach each episode better prepared and bringing more value to our listener, who really the reason why they come is to get what it is we have to offer as far as their podcast and getting that up and running. And I really love today's topic because we've been talking about making money with your podcast, and who does not like to make money? So today we're going to talk about how to make money with your podcast through content marketing. And I'm really excited about diving into this topic and bring value to our listener.
Wow, that's it's going to be a great episode. But I'm sure a lot of our listeners are out there wondering this question: what is content marketing?
Yeah, I know, because we hear this term so often, especially in our space, and we think everybody know what it means. And sometimes we have to stop and explain and ask ourselves a question. Okay, so what is content marketing? And if you ask the average person who uses this phrase, I believe they would have a hard time sometimes explaining what it means. So I just want to begin by saying content marketing is a medium by which we promote and distribute our articles, our videos, our products, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And, on top of that, content marketing, here we go. We're going to define something by using the name and the definition, but it's a form of marketing focused on creating and publishing and distributing your content for your target audience.
And the beautiful thing about this, Bill, is that it helps us to directly or eventually sell a product or service. So I think it's really a very important topic when we think about making money, because that's what it's all about, right? Mm-hmm. Is how do we use that to bring in revenue? And I think we can do that very directly, or eventually, especially as you're listening in and you're saying, I'm just getting started. Well, it may be eventually for you, but this is a means by which you can make additional income.
Sure. And, marketing is the strategy of how you're going to deliver the value. Selling, that's the action where you actually get out and you make and close the sale. So, when we're talking about content marketing, we're talking about the whole picture of this. And, we got to get it out there because you really don't have any marketing without a sale at the end. So, just bear that in mind. Let's get that out there in front so people know that right at the beginning that, this is all building towards making you money with your podcast.
Which I think really nicely dovetail, Bill, into then why. Why do we need? So I think you kind of set that up so well just now in what you shared. because I think it now brings us to point or go deeper, a little bit deeper than why do we need content marketing, like you just said just now, is a means, but then you have to have a sale at the end to kind of finish the whole, the whole journey, the whole distance, the whole circle, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So what would you begin by saying, Bill, why do we need it? And then I can follow up with what you have to say.
Well, one of the things that I think is very important with, why we need content marketing is it gives us a way to promote what it is that we do to our audience. And by promote, I mean discuss the idea, to get it out in front of people, to encourage others in that, to the promotion of it, saying, hey, this is what I do. I'm happy about it. This is, how you can do it too if this is your thing. That's all, that all gets right into, promoting what it is that you do to your audience.
Yeah, and I think inside of that is the interesting information that person is gathering about their niche. So whatever your niche is, or niche, how you want to pronounce that, is that you're gathering information to share that, to market that, to get that to your audience. Is the means by which you're going to distribute, is promote, is carry that along so your audience can get that information. So I think it's a very important aspect of our business. This is a very rich and important part to any business that is successful.
Yeah, and the gathering of the information together about your topic, just by the virtue of doing that, taking the effort to go and gather that information together, helps to establish you as a knowledgeable person in that field. Somebody who has the information that others want. So it's very important, as Kingsley was saying, to gather that information about your niche, not really sure which, for your audience.
You use a phrase just now, Bill, that I think where we kind of just have a little bit of a difference here in our opinions, because you mentioned a person who is knowledgeable in their field, in their niche. And I would say that person who is knowledgeable, I would call them an expert. So I think content marketing is to demonstrate your expertise on your subject matter, so that the people who are listening to you, who are going to listen to you, who are going to come to you, are looking at you as one or two steps ahead of them. And they're simply saying to you, to them, you are an expert. So I would say it's to demonstrate your expertise on a subject matter that the person or the people in your audience are going to come and say, hey, who wouldn't want to learn from an expert? I don't want to learn from somebody who is not an expert.
Now wait just a minute there, Kingsley Grant. I disagree.
Go ahead.
Tune in for Content Marketing Throwdown with Kingsley Grant and Bill Griggs. Okay.
And in the right corner, is Gilgrid. And coming out swinging is now Kingsley have already done his job. So, Bill, you come out swinging and let me hear what you got to say.
All right. I think that one of the reasons we need content marketing is to demonstrate how enthusiastic we are about the subject. Not necessarily that we're an expert. And, a lot of our listeners aren't yet experts. They're just very enthusiastic about the topic. We don't want to scare them off thinking they have to be an expert on everything.
And that may be true, Bill, but, for example, if I know how to lift a spoon and put food to my mouth, and somebody else who have never seen that being done, and they see me and say, man, how do you do that? To them, I'm now an expert, because I'm going to share with them something I've mastered and have been doing for a long time. And sometimes here's the problem, I think, Bill. People just kind of they just kind of almost dismiss what they do as something very special. Well, to them, it's normal. To somebody who have never seen it done or done it themselves, it's extraordinary. That makes them, in my eyes, an expert.
Well, yes, I will concede on that, but here comes my jab. I think an enthusiastic person on this subject is much more relatable to the audience than an expert on the subject. And that's just my personal opinion. Duckweed.
So here's what we'll say is an expert enthusiast or an enthusiastic expert. How about that?
Ding! Okay, we're saved by the bell. All right, let's shake hands.
Yes, exactly.
It looks like a draw. So let's move on. One thing that we do know about why we need content marketing is a way to distribute our products and message to a global community. That's really what it boils down to. As many people who are interested in our topic as we possibly can. That's why we want to use content marketing to get our product or message out there, to distribute it to the world.
Yeah, I think it's in this opportunity we have this medium of podcasts that we can access the whole global community. As we know, over 3.5 billion people are on the internet and are looking for information to consume all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's why I believe you ought to start that right away. So When should we do that? Is as soon as you possibly can. As a matter of fact, someone has said, when should you have started? 20 years ago. And the second best time is today.
I agree. There's something about doing something right now, taking the action, even if you were feeling uncomfortable doing it. Yes. It was a big hold up for me. I was trying to remember the other day when I first started blogging, even before podcasting, when I wrote my first article, how pent up and tight I was about this whole thing. I was like really nervous. Oh man, I'm putting this out there. Will anybody listen? I'm going to make a fool of myself. Will, people flame me? It was the same way with the podcast, and a blog is another form of content, but it was the same thing. I was uncomfortable, but I found that growth always comes in from your outside of your comfort zone. And, you should always do content marketing, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable.
And I agree, because I think it's in that time of discomfort, so to speak, we step out of that, because as someone has said, it's outside of our comfort zone we find success. So I believe that's 100%. And I also, you could start or should do it when it is not perfect. Because if you're going to wait until perfection to get started, you're going to be waiting forever. You're never going to get started. Mm-hmm. And if your first product, your first content marketing effort is perfect, then you know what? You will never improve on perfection. You'll never grow on that. So it must have some imperfection where you can look back and say, look how far I have come. That's why we say start today when it's not perfect, when you're feeling uncomfortable, and the best time is right now.
Somebody once said that if you are not embarrassed by the first thing you put out, you waited too long to put it out. And, that is so true. I mean, I go back and I listen to, well, let's take this podcast, our first podcast episode. If we had waited for perfection, we would have never accomplished what we were trying to do. And I don't know if we really discussed this recently in this show, but our whole goal was to launch a podcast in the time between a conference and Friday. We set a deadline. And we did everything, build the website, the whole 9 yards, just, to get this podcast out there. We recorded our episode, and a decision was made that however far we were in our editing process at midnight on Friday, that's as far as we were going, and we were going to launch the podcast. And we did. If we had waited for it to be perfect, it would have been another 4 or 5 days, because it was a while between when we put out the pilot of the show and when we put out the official first episode. And
isn't that one of the things that, Bill, you've described in the past episode, where you were kind of waiting for it to be perfect before you launch your own podcast, your other podcast, CNC Routership?
Oh yeah. Same pattern. I knew if I kept procrastinating, trying to make it perfection, trying to reach perfection and trying to make this episode perfect, that I would never, ever launch. And it was more important to launch than it was for it to be perfect, because you can figure out perfect later.
Which I think kind of lends itself then for us to talk about then, Bill. How do we do that? Because we discussed the why, we discussed the when, we've discussed the fact now that the what is content marketing. But I think as a listener, you're probably wondering then, okay, how or where do we get this? Do we do this kind of stuff we've discussed so far? And I want to begin by saying what we're doing, for example, right now in our podcast is content marketing. Mm-hmm. We're sharing with you content right now. And this is one of the platforms we have chosen to use to promote and distribute our content, gather information, and share that with you so that you can go ahead and get your podcast ready and get started by Friday. Mm-hmm. So we are hoping that this platform is what it is we're describing here, is a content marketing machine that we are working on, and hopefully today you'll see it as such as well.
Yep. Now, just as a quick recap before I go in, content marketing is focused on creating, publishing, and distributing content for your target audience online, and that's where we're going with this. So, one place where we can do this, how do we do it? Well, we can start with the show notes of your podcast episode and your blog post. In our case, our show notes and our blog post are one and the same, but there are other podcasts who separate the two. They'll have a blog post that goes along with every episode, and they'll have show notes, which will have links and resources and things inside of it that people can go to and check out. We talked about affiliate marketing in the last episode 37. And, maybe you have affiliate links in there. So it's very cool inside of, it's very easy, very low hanging fruit kind of thing to use your blog post and show notes as a form of content marketing.
Yeah. And I think also, we have the show notes or the blog post idea is another way for people to find out more about what it is you're putting out there, because they search Google, that will have in there some of the keywords or phrases we have talked about in the past, where someone who's looking for example, podcast or, of a viable minimum product or a podcast, as example, they're going to find in our show notes those phrases, those terms, and Google will bring them to our notes and, of course, give us a chance to have that person become another subscriber or a listener like you are. And by the way, if you have not yet subscribed to our show, let me just say right here, make sure you have gone to iTunes and subscribed to our show and be leaving us a rating and a review about the content that we're putting out. Talk about how the content marketing has been valuable to you. And I just want to insert that here as we discuss show notes and podcasts.
This is the section of our show where we would normally pause for a word from our sponsor. Now, if you would like to be the sponsor of the Podcast by Friday show, and you have a product or service that you feel would be of benefit to new entrepreneurs starting their new podcast, and contact us at podcast@podcastbyfriday.com, and we'll see if you'd be a good fit.
I also find, Bill, that video channels are another way to distribute or promote our content. And we have, obviously, we've talked about the fact that sometimes it's easier to show something through a video than we can do in our audio by describing, as much as we are so articulate and we are great at communication and put all our words together and give you the description and paint a picture for you, we come up short.
Mm-hmm. There is nothing that really can trump video when it comes to transmitting the most information in the shortest period of time. The downside of video is, well, you have to be watching. So if you're driving, it's kind of hard to do video. But that's what that's why podcasts are.
Please don't watch and drive.
Yeah. That's our safety notice for today. But video has a lot to recommend it, and you can do that as part of your content marketing strategy. Along with your blog notes or your podcast or whatever. There's a variety of places where you can put your content to grow your audience. YouTube is probably the largest out there. Millions and millions, probably billions of people are on YouTube, putting their content out, showing how they're doing things, and gathering an audience.
I think YouTube is behind Facebook as the most watched video. I mean, actually, the most trafficked when it comes to like the social media site, and they have, as in Facebook said, they have 3.6 or 3.something billion people every day. Well, YouTube is 1.6 billion that actually people watching. So it's a great channel to distribute your content.
Go
and
ahead
I think
with those
that
numbers.
Go
ahead with those numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, because I did a research recently and I said, man, and again, also YouTube is a second largest search engine platform there is next to Google. So it's a great way to get your content out there.
Yeah, it's funny when we're searching for something now. When we go to Google and we type in what it is we think we're searching for, and if it's something technical, like we were having difficulty with an audio hookup earlier in the week, and for your Zoom H4n recorder.
Yes.
Kingsley wanted to use two of the ATR 2100 microphones that we recommend and use to do a live
recording.
But he was having trouble with one of the hookups. So we actually went and went to Google and typed it in, and even as specific as typing in Zoom H4n and setup, and boom, there it was. And the first thing we started looking for was a video. We weren't looking for a written document about it. We were looking for a video. Show us how you hooked it up. So that's the power of it. I mean, YouTube is a big thing. It's not the only thing. There's other services like Vimeo. Vimeo is I don't know what the numbers are on that one, but it's also got quite a following. What are some others, Kingsley?
And I think one of the important thing is that we just briefly mentioned these is where you're going to host your videos, because you don't want to host your video on your site. It just will slow it down, and it's just crazy. You don't want to do that. So these are also places you can store your videos and have it being accessed, and also can have it hidden and behind a wall, all those different things. So Bill mentioned Vimeo, but also Wistia is another one that is very popular for courses as well. People use Wistia a lot. It's a paid platform, as others that we're going to mention. Libsyn is also another one where you also do your audio for your podcast. They also do videos as well. And there's a number of social media platforms that allow you to upload videos and then store it for you, and it can be accessed there. So there's a number of places you can use as a video channel for content marketing.
Awesome. And we could go down that rabbit hole for hours. Just know that is a very powerful method of content marketing that's used by a lot of people. Another thing is through various audio channels. We mentioned earlier that your podcast can be a form of content marketing, and that you can use. But where do you put that out? If you only put it out in one place, only those people who are in that place will ever see it. So it's very important when you're doing that. We were talking about distributing your product to a global community. Well, there are lots of communities. iTunes is probably the big one that everybody thinks of first for podcasts. That's one place, and probably the most popular place, to put your podcast episodes, but it's not the only one.
It's not, and I think that we hear many times about which is iTunes that come to mind, which I get it, because it's the biggest one, and I think that it's also a place people search for and find what it is that they're looking for as, keywords and so on. But we have Google Play for Android, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's also a big one as well.
Yeah, and because it's
And
affiliated with Google, it's got all that huge audience already built in. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And I think it should not be discounted as a big player in this area of audio channels. So you want to think about Google Play, and iHeartRadio is another place that you can use for audio channels to get your content marketing out there. And again, we just mentioned these because you are needing to have as many as possible. The more channels you have, the better it is.
Yeah. Now, iHeartRadio is a like a syndication network, for lack of a better term. They're selective on what podcasts they allow, and there's terms and conditions that you have to meet before they will accept your podcast to be put out there on their thing. One of the things, and this, just briefly, one of the things that iHeartRadio requires is that your intro and outro music, the music that you play at the beginning and end of your episodes, can't be longer than 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. Maybe that doesn't fit into your podcast style, but, it's something to know before you try and submit to iHeartRadio.
And make sure, again, that your music is royalty free, that you're not using somebody else's music, because they won't also allow you to play that because, again, it's infringement on copyrights.
Mm-hmm. And if you were, wondering about royalty free music, we covered that in episode 29. Royalty free intro music for your podcast. So, you can go and check that one out.
And we have also Bill, Spreaker as another one, and a TuneIn Radio as another one. I think we just want to kind of mention that you can know there are what we're mentioning is some that we know about, and we've used some of these, but there's also a ton of other ones out there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Stitcher, for example, there's a ton of them. Spreaker's the one that we use for hosting our content. We also use Google Play, and we also use iTunes. We've got our content out on those three platforms for audio channels. So, there's one other place that you can do content marketing with, is a platform for your content marketing, and that's Amazon, through a variety of ways. Yeah. One of our internet marketing heroes is Pat Flynn, and Pat Flynn got started doing ebooks as his way of getting his message out there through content marketing. Well, Amazon is perfect for ebooks because of their Kindle, Amazon Kindle. And people are putting out their ebooks as Kindle books through Amazon.
Yeah, and I want to mention before we even that we did a more exhaustive episode in describing these platforms, which is episode number 23. So if you want to hear more about some of these platforms we just mentioned, about how you actually use them and so on, you want to go to episode 23. That's podcastbyfriday.com/23, and you'll see more of the descriptive explanation of these platforms we've just described, and you can get more of a detailed way of how to use them in your own podcast journey. And another one is on an Amazon bill is Create Space, which I've used to actually publish my books, my printed books, and then use that and bring over into Amazon and make a Kindle version. So that's another way they can use Amazon as a content marketing platform.
Yeah, just for those who aren't familiar with CreateSpace, it is a print-on-demand service that Amazon has, where you can send in your book and have it formatted, and you could buy just one book, or you could buy hundreds of books. And it's a good way to get your content out there by self-publishing. So, CreateSpace is a very powerful form that Amazon has. The one that I like lately, and I use a lot, and is Audible. I like to listen to my information. If you're a podcast listener, that's probably one of the things that you like as well. You like to receive your content through audio, and Audible is a place where you can get books and bestsellers and even short projects that you can listen to. And, it's very cool. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I consume a lot of my book and get through a lot of books that way through Audible, and which is, again, another platform that people have used to distribute their content. And we described that earlier because if you remember at the very beginning, Bill mentioned about the fact that it's how we used to promote and distribute our articles, our videos, our products, our our services through these channels we have described. Mm-hmm. So we have, in a sense, Bill, I mean, in such a short time, really covered a lot of information, right? Mm-hmm. But I think we would be able, amiss if we had not added one more piece here, which I think you might want to share with your audience just now.
Well, actually, it's just another thing about Audible. And, the whole point of this, you remember we talked about having a sale at the end of your marketing process. Well, as we discussed in the last episode where we talked about affiliate marketing, we put a link in this blog post, in the show notes, to Audible. If you want to try Audible for free, there's a link on our page. You can click the link and it'll give you a free 14-day trial of the Audible. And it's an affiliate relationship. This is something that we have that we're marketing, that we get a small commission for. It doesn't cost you any extra. But you can get your first audiobook for free through Audible by following our link. And that's going to be in the show notes to this episode, which is podcastbyfriday.com/38.
Which I think is very important for you to take advantage of this opportunity to really see is a free. Who doesn't like free? Hello. I think it's a great way to get some free access to Audible and get a book. That book is there a book that you may recommend that possibly this person who is starting out that you've read that you think that, hey, it's a good read for them to even check out in Audible?
Oh, there are so many. I mean, there are literally millions of books on Audible. One that I enjoyed, in fact, it was the first book I ever listened to on Audible, and it kind of opened my eyes to this world, was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Yes.
It's a long book, but it is a great book, and it's full of information, and it tells you about how to think about, having a lifestyle business, having the ability to work with people to help build your business.
And I think it really gets a mindset shift that needs to happen of what's possible. Now, I've heard someone say, I don't want to work 4 hours a week, because I just would go bored. So, but I think the principle, though, it gives you a good chance to say what's possible. So I think it's a great suggestion, Bill. And again, you can find all the links in the show notes at podcastbyfriday.com/38. So we've covered, I mentioned, Bill, what is content marketing? We've talked about why do we need content marketing? And we've gone into detail in those areas. Mm-hmm. When should we start? How do we go about doing this content marketing, and where should it be done? And now I think we want to make certain that we don't overwhelm you. We don't want you to think, oh my word, there is so much. Where do I start? What can I do? What's the first thing I need to do from listening to this, Bill? What would you say to that person so they can exhale and not die?
I'm sure the listeners are out there saying, oh my gosh, they said so many different places that I need to put my content. Oh, how am I going to do it all? Oh my goodness, I don't have time for all this. Breathe, relax. We're going to make this simple for you. We don't want you drinking from the fire hose. We're going to bring this down to garden hose size.
Yes.
So we just think we're going to make it real simple. Your action, what you should do, your assignment from this episode is to just pick two. Mm-hmm. Two methods along with your podcast. We're going to go by default that podcast is one of the things that you have chosen. So two additional things besides your podcast that you can reach your audience. You've got a lot to choose from these. Pick the two that you feel will give you the best reach in your audience. That's all.
Just two?
Just two. Yeah, we'll give you something to do.
Thank you. I really can breathe out now. I appreciate it because I think it really, Bill, with the chance of them doing those two and be successful is you just increase your chance by 1,000%. So Thank you for us breaking it down so simple for them.
Yep. Your only assignment is to choose. You don't have to go out and put your content out yet. Just choose two. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to focus on that. Done.
There you get it. I think you can have asked for a simpler breakdown of what it is. We've covered a lot, like I mentioned before, and all you need to do, as Bill said, is just choose two methods. We'd love to hear what it is you've chosen, and we want to give you an opportunity to communicate with us and let us know what did you choose. And by that, you can share also with our community at facebook.com/groups/podcast by Friday. Just connect with us there. Share with us what your thoughts are, what you've chosen, but also a feedback on this episode. Talk to us.
Yeah, it's very good place to get information, get access to us. Speaking of groups, I'd just like to give a shout out to one of our new group members, John McAvoy, who recently joined the group. And if you don't mind, I'm going to take it just a second and read to you something that he sent us.
Okay.
Of course. He says, "Hi, Bill and Kingsley. I really enjoyed your podcast by Friday's show. You were asking for suggestions, and I'd like to know how you and Kingsley plan and prep for an episode. Do you do dry runs? Do you prepare a storyboard, or write an overall script?" That was his question. And we got back to him and we gave him quite a detailed answer on how we do it. And, that's the kind of access that you have inside of the Facebook group, the Podcast by Friday Facebook group. So, if you've got questions, just shoot us a message. We'll do our best to answer it.
And we will also be able to give you, actually, we'll be in the group number one, as Bill mentioned to the email, but we also be in the group ourselves so that we can have an ongoing dialogue that I think others would benefit from. And so we want to encourage that method as a primary way of us having a continued engagement. So we want to mention again, every link we mentioned today will be in the show notes, and you can find it at podcastbyfriday.com/3H. That's 38. And we will make sure that we've included the past episodes of podcasts we have mentioned also in the show notes.
Kingsley, that's great information. And I was just wondering now, this is unscripted, unthought of here, but maybe at some point in the future, after we finish this portion of the series, we could just let our listeners listen in as we prepare for an episode as the episode, so they know how we do it.
It's a good idea. And again, you can also, if you want to chime in on this and say, yeah, you'd love to just give us a thumbs up, so to speak, in the group. So we can also know that this will be also helpful to you as well.
Yeah, and because we've got a system down after this many episodes, it would be interesting, I think, for our listeners, and we'll have to discuss that next time we're getting together. So, thank you.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening into this episode of Podcast by Friday. I hope that you learned a little something about content marketing and, take the mystery out of it. Opened your eyes to the opportunities that you have. Podcast by Friday. Take bold action to create your minimal viable podcast today. Check out new episodes at podcastbyfriday.com or on iTunes or Spreaker.